Hey, what is up guys? It's your boy Speed here, and today we're going to be talking about the downside of heroes. This is a new series I'll be doing, and I'm extremely excited to be doing this series because this series is going to just really give you guys some extremely advanced knowledge on Dota. This is stuff that most players just don't actively think about, don't know about, and so let me tell you about the series. It's going to be called the downside of heroes, as I mentioned a second ago, and basically I'm going to go through every single hero in Dota. We're going to start with Alk, and for every single hero, I'm going to give you 3 points about these heroes that are weaknesses of them. So you're going to be able to exploit these heroes in game. Basically what I was thinking about is, for a lot of players, they know how to play their own hero, but they don't know how to take advantage of the weaknesses of their opponents, and as a result, they don't get that good. They get stuck at 3k, 4k, or even lower. And so hopefully with this knowledge, you guys can push your boundaries and become a better Dota player. But alright, let's get into it. Also, I want to tell you guys that if you've been struggling with solo queue and you're looking to get to the next rank, I'm going to be able to help you. Like, literally, with the gameleap website, I'm going to give you guys guides that are going to make it unbelievably clear on what you need to do. So if you've been stuck in the solo queue grind, you don't know what to do, and you want to become absolutely broken, but like actually you want to become much better at Dota, and you want to take it more seriously, the gameleap website is going to help you do that. So click the link down below. I'm going to help you get to the next rank, and I'll see you there. Alright, so let's start with Alchemist. The first downside of Alchemist is the classic Alch dilemma of needing too much space. The first thing that I recommend you do against Alchemist, besides putting pressure, trying to smoke gank him, and just in general fighting his team when he is not online, is blocking his camps. I think this is a wildly underrated mechanic in Dota right now. And I definitely recommend that when you're against an early game Alchemist, whether or not he's in the safe lane, mid lane, or off lane, is just block the nearby camps. It's going to severely drop his GPM, and most players are too lazy to unblock the camps. Even support players often forget. Players will also even not know what's going on in a huge percentage of games, so this is definitely a hard counter to Al. And number 2, there's a long gap between his ult. Okay, this is probably the most exploitable thing about Alk that basically no one actually takes advantage of, at least consciously, and that is his ult downtime. Alchemist's ult is probably the reason he isn't meta right now. There's a long gap between it, it's a 25-second duration, but a 55-second cooldown, which means that there's a 30-second downtime. The ulti is down longer than it's up. A lot of team fights in the mid to late game, especially when you're trying to siege, last way longer than that. So essentially what I'm trying to tell you here is when you see the Alk ulti come out, punish it. When it ends, punish it. Take advantage of that type of thing. Identify when it's down and fight his team. Smoke when it's down. The hero sucks without its ulti. It's slow, its base attack time is trash, it's not really tanky, so fight in that. And then finally, he falls off late game. And the reason why this is important to note is the hero has a massive issue with sieging in a lot of games. Once you get past that 30-minute mark, generally you're going to have some way to kill the Alk. And as a result, as long as you can defend high ground, even if the game has been going poorly and he's dominated you from the 20 to 30-minute mark, he will generally start to fall off as the game progresses. He'll kind of just get locked up on item slots, and his kit does not allow him to hard carry games. Greevil's Greet obviously is not a good fighting ability. Acid Spray is mediocre. I've talked about the downsides of his ulti, and so you can really abuse this hero in the late game. So make sure you do not give up. Keep the lanes in even when you fall behind against Alex. Split up the map. Avoid his hardcore timing when he has 4 to 5 items before your carry sometimes even has 3, and you'll generally win the game. Alright, next up, let's talk about Abaddon. Also, I do want to mention that I'm going to go over Agi heroes and then int heroes as well. I didn't want to just do 6 strength heroes in this video, so I'll be going over 6 heroes total and doing 2 Agi and 2 int as well. So for Abaddon, the first disadvantage is the hero cannot deal with split push whatsoever. The only advantage Abaddon has when it comes to dealing with split push is he can like bait, right? He can like get gone on and then his team can TP in. But when it comes to like defending the tower or shoving waves, Abaddon can't do anything. So if you feel like it's a little bit difficult to fight into the Abaddon, or let's say, you know, you're playing Sand King Skywrath and you need to blow someone up, but every time you try or when you feel like you try, he saves them, right? If that is the case, right? If that is the case, then what you need to be doing is splitting the map. The the hero cannot be everywhere. It's also a hero that, you know, isn't going to get a lot of farms, so it's not going to have mobility items. It's probably not going to have an Aether. It's not going to have a Blink. It's not going to have bots. It's not even going to have, like, Windlace in a lot of games. And as a result, if you can split the map, not only is Abaddon and his team likely going to struggle to keep in the waves, but you're also going to be able to find opportunities where you can burst targets and he cannot save them. So avoid like just straight up 5-on-5s all the time against Abba. Try to get the waves out and take advantage of the fact that he's bad against split push. On top of that, one thing I would like to mention on the note of him not being able to deal with split push as well is that because he doesn't have a stun, this is something to like just keep in mind as well. You know, anytime the enemy team lacks Disable, you should be pushing your luck a lot more in side lanes. Even when it comes to the mid lane and like where you're playing on the map, you can play a lot further up against a lack of stuns. And that's just a, you know, a tidbit of knowledge in general that's very valuable and you guys should keep in mind. On top of that, he has some specific very bad matchups. In general, one thing that's cool to note about Abaddon is he cannot purge taunts. So things like Axe Call, Huskar ulti, well, with Huskar ulti with Axe and Black Hole are all very hard counters to Abaddon. And you should keep this in mind when drafting, but also just when playing against the hero. If you want to go on one of his cores and you happen to have one of these taunts, use this as your jump to kill people even when the enemy team has an Abaddon. And finally, he cannot deal with lane dragging. So there's a lot of these heal supports, such as Warlock and Omni Knight, and I'll probably mention this for all of them whenever they come up. But in lane, they're very bad when you drag the wave, which is why Axe in particular is a very good hero against Abaddon. Right, the lane is generally pretty good. You have the taunt against the shield, but Abaddon just can't really do enough to shut down lane dragging. So whether or not you're a position 4 or the position 3 just trying to farm, you can essentially avoid a lane. Let's say it's just some really annoying Abaddon Jug running at you or an Abaddon Troll running at you and the lane is hard. You can just kind of ignore the lane. You can try to drag, and a large percentage of the time, if Abaddon doesn't have his passive, or even if he does have his passive, you can generally just ignore him and avoid the laning stage. And this is really important to note in some matchups because people will fight head first into Abaddon, and against the shield and the constant heals, they'll get out sustained and the lane can go poorly when they could have just avoided the lane as a whole. So keep that in mind, especially when you're a hero like Centaur or Sand King or Axe. You know, this is a great way to amp your farm and avoid fighting into the Abaddon in certain lanes. All right, next up, let's talk about Anti-Mage. So the first thing to note is that he dies to most 2-hero smoke ganks early game. The reality of Anti-Mage is that for 20 minutes straight, he basically can die to any 2-hero smoke. He doesn't have a very clear defensive timing in the early game. A lot of heroes will have, you know, some HP, maybe a Manta, you know, something along these lines to keep them alive. AM obviously has Counterspell and Blink, but if you have the right heroes, he kind of just feeds. On top of that, there's even a lot of heroes that solo kill him. So if you are one of those heroes, hunt him. Hunt him. And on that note, the third point I wanted to make, but I'm going to move it to here, is that you should identify if you should chase him or his team. So this is some really advanced stuff, but you gotta keep this in mind when you're playing against Anti-Mage. A lot of people will make the mistake when they're playing against Anti-Mage. What they'll do is they will basically, let's say they're playing Lycan, right? They'll chase the AM around the map as Lycan. And it's like, unless you have the perfect creep and completely outplay him, you're not gonna kill him. Or let's say you're playing Vengeful Spirit. You're never gonna be able to stun an Anti-Mage. He can blink away from your stun, he can E your stun, you're not gonna catch him. So if you're playing one of these types of heroes that does not directly address AM, you should be killing his team. If you can make AM have to 1v9 the game where, let's say he's top net worth by 1,000 or 2,000 gold, but the rest of his team is poor because you've completely ignored him, that's good enough a lot of the time, right? Even if he's extremely farmed, if his team is poor and can't help him, he won't be able to do much in team fights anyway. So that's something to keep in mind. However, if you're playing something like a Blade Mail Axe or a Blade Mail Legion, or you're a Puck with Dream Coil and you can kill him with a +1, you should be hunting the AM pretty actively, and you should be looking to smoke gank, read his movements around the map, and so on. If you do not identify this and you just chase him or don't chase him when you should, you'll probably lose to him. And finally, he has a hard time jumping into death balls. Basically, just don't split up too much in team fights. Like if you're playing a position 5 that dies really easily to him, try to stay relatively close to your carry so that if he jumps on you, then you can turn the fight around. Next up, let's talk about Arc Warden. So, he cannot live a smoke gank for his life. On that note, take his tier 1 mid ASAP. Now, this might be like the worst hero in the game when it comes to living smoke ganks. I mean, he just has no defensive option. Now, I know it's like, speed, I have magnetic field. What about magnetic field? It's like, magnetic field? All right, if that is your best option, magnetic field, he's not gonna live. All right, the most early game smoke ganks are magic damage, okay? Just smoke gank him. If you have an inkling of where this guy is, smoke gank him. You will kill him. He's not that tanky. He has decent base strength, but he's not that tanky. And he'll generally feed. On top of that, the best way to smoke gank people is after you take their mid tier 1. Then you can smoke through mid, and these heroes like Arc Warden that are going to consistently be kind of obvious in their positioning because they'll usually clear a wave and then walk into the jungle. If you can pay attention to that and you've taken their mid tier 1, you can easily smoke through mid and pick them off. So when you're against a greedy jungling hero like Arc Warden, and you can probably apply this to other heroes as well, you definitely can, taking his mid tier 1 is going to allow you to smoke gank the hell out of them. And this obviously works against heroes like Dusa and Luna. I'll probably repeat this in future videos. But yeah, the earlier you take his mid tier 1, the earlier you're going to be able to smoke gank him. And that is how you shut heroes like this down. Next up, Arc Warden gets clapped. He gets destroyed if you have a gap close hero with Scotty or any man fight heroes. So one thing to keep in mind is at the end of the day, he's a right click ranged hero. So if you have a Scotty builder, sometimes as a Terrorblade, what you can do or what you'll see is you'll see pros by blink actually. You can do this on Luna, you can do it on Medusa, especially if he goes greedy and doesn't go BKB, which some Arc Wardens will, then going Blink with a Scotty or Blink with a BKB on a lot of heroes will just decimate him. The hero is not known for manning up. It's not really what it does. It can at some point in the game with like Mjolnir, BKB, Satanic, but like that's obviously very late into the game. And so previous to that, gap close is the way to go. Getting on top of this hero is very important. And finally, kind of on that note, I sort of mentioned it already, but I want to mention it again, and that is the delayed BKB. In a lot of games, he'll go Midas, Bots, and then Maelstrom. This can be 20 minutes with no BKB, 24, 25 minutes with no BKB. Sometimes players will then buy an Orchid after that, or they'll buy like a Hurricane Pike after that, or they'll buy a Daedalus after that, or something really greedy. If you see that, you need to be chasing this guy around the map. You need to hunt him and find him, because they'll just die easily. So please keep that in mind. It's a very delayed BKB hero in a lot of games, and that's very punishable for certain drafts. Next up is Ancient Apparition. The first one is that he's diveable in lane and in the game. This is a hero that practically has no defensive option. Like, obviously Cold Feet and Ice Vortex are, sometimes his ulti is, but like at the end of the day, AA is always going to be a very slow, mediocre armor, low HP hero at every stage in the game. And so you kind of just want to kill this hero. It's basically like one of those heroes where it's like an Oracle, right? Where often you want to hunt it at the beginning of the fight. Except it's even better, right? Because at least Oracle can often save himself in some situations. AA kind of just can't. And so it's absolutely one of those heroes where if you're a Storm or you're a Clockwork and you can get on top of him, it's often a good idea, and it's very good to just be aggressive on this hero in lane in general if he steps out of position due to his mediocre HP pool, poor way of defending himself, and of course his poor movement speed. Next up is that he cannot defend lanes. So previous to this hero's level 6 spike, it's horrible at defending towers, right? Ice Vortex is obviously okay to some extent, but he doesn't have wave clear. It's not a Coddle, it's not a Winter Wyvern, right? It's not a Bane that can set up. It kind of just like doesn't really do much to siege. It can Cold Feet, but that's like it. And so he can't defend the lanes. If you have heroes that can take towers, it's good to push your luck against a level 4, level 5 AA. You can even dive him in a lot of situations kind of in tangent with the first point. But yeah, he cannot defend lanes. He cannot deal with split push. Kind of similar to the Abaddon that we talked about. He does not like when you split up the map. The only situation in which he likes when you split up the map is if he can +1 with the Sand King and kill people. And that's my final point. He always requires a +1. So when you're playing against AA, you need to be a little bit afraid of the +1 stuns. However, if you see him alone, you can kind of just ignore him in most situations. He doesn't do enough to threaten a majority of heroes alone. He just doesn't. And as a result, as I was saying, he requires a +1. If you see the +1s, that's who you need to be afraid of. So when you're playing against AA, watch the follow-up stunts, watch the X combo, watch the Sand King stun. These are the things you need to be worried about when you're playing against AA. Otherwise, if you see these heroes showing, you can kind of just ignore him. You might be like, why is this even useful information? Can I ignore most position 5s? No, right? If the position 5 is a shaman, a lion, or a bane, you can't necessarily ignore them if they're showing. But against AA, who cares a lot of situations? It just doesn't really matter. You have to worry about the other heroes. This is pretty advanced stuff, but it is important information. And finally, last but not least, we're going to be talking about Bane as an int hero. The first one is unit heroes. Heroes like Brood and Visage and Beastmaster and Lycan, even Nature's Prophet is a pick I like against Bane in a lot of games, are all heroes that kind of just destroy him. Visage can cancel the grip. Even if you grip Visage, he can cancel it. He can get rid of Nightmare. Beastmaster can cancel grip. He can get rid of Nightmare. His Helm Dom creep can often cancel grip if he wants it to. Same thing with Lycan. So all of these matchups are horrendous with Bane. Bane's even bad against these heroes in lane for the most part as well. So like these unit heroes are kind of just the bane of Bane's existence. That was extremely funny. But yeah, that's the first point. So keep that in mind. In terms of drafting, these are all great options against Bane if you want to pick it like that. Often I will if I see Bane and then like the position 4 is like, let's say Alina, I'll pick a Lycan because I know I'm going to have at least 2 good matchups and I'm going to be able to run them over. Next up is Lotus Orb. We're going over an item here. Yes, an item. Lotus is just too good against Bane. You know, he's 4 single targeted spells, right? But it's better than that, right? Lotus Orb instantly cancels grip, so it's not even like it's a Lion where at least if you're Lion and you're against Lotus, you can stun. Sure, you're going to get stunned yourself, but at least your stun goes off. So even if someone gets Lotus, you can still stun them, sacrifice yourself for the team, or hex them, and then you go from there. Grip, it just ends, right? So it's hard counters him. If you Lotus someone sieging, Bane can't do that. Also, Nightmare is very good to reflect, and if he Nightmares someone and you Lotus them, it purges the Nightmare. So even if you don't want to take it off yourself or you don't have a unit hero, you have a great way of getting rid of Nightmare, which is a great option. And finally, it's funny, a lot of the supports that are early on to this list do not have wave clear. AA doesn't, Abaddon doesn't, and Recovering Bane, but the reality is, I gotta mention it again, when you're against Bane, he does not have wave clear, which means this hero is very bad at defending towers, especially against unit-based pushes. Now, even if you're not against unit-based pushes, if you have 2 heroes next to each other, or 3 is honestly the magic number against Bane, because 2, sometimes he can Nightmare into grip and it can become a problem. But against 3 heroes or like synergized pushes in the early game, Bane doesn't have a good way of stalling. So often what you'll see, let's say like someone like Puppy do, if he's playing Ench or Chen or Weaver, he'll sit in the safe lane and he'll defend the tower infinitely. He'll just consistently prevent you from taking the tower as the position 5, and he'll stall. If you see a Bane doing this, you can bring a couple of numbers and easily kick him out. He won't be able to clear the wave, and this will become a big problem, and you'll be able to take his towers. On top of that, like, let's say it's the mid to late game, right? And you split up the map and you clear waves. Bane can't TP back to defend the waves, right? He's not going to be able to deal with the waves. He's not going to be able to clear them and give his team map control by doing that. And as a result, in the mid to late game, if you clear waves, you're always going to force a core TP, which is a pretty big deal. You do have to watch out for the Bane setting up on you when you are clearing the waves. That's like one of the main advantages of Bane. He has like 12 seconds to disable if he catches you alone. But if he doesn't catch you and you get the waves out, or you know where he is and you get the waves out, you're almost always going to force that core TP. The Ember's going to have to TP, the PA is going to have to TP, and then you're going to get a lot of information on where a key valuable hero is, and you can really take advantage of that. So anytime you're against Bane, playing these heroes that can get in the waves, and if you're able to do that, it's really nice against this team, especially if it's a mediocre Bane player and he never catches you. It's really going to create an advantage against Bane team comps, because they're just going to lack wave clear. They don't have a Jakiro on their team, or a Wyvern or something, or a Rubik. All right, that's going to be all for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you like this, if you like the idea of the series, please let me know. I mean, I'd love to keep doing it. I think there's a lot of niche but really important information within these videos. I could even do this on the gameleap website if it doesn't go too well here, but either way, I'm excited to do this. I hope to keep it going, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace!
And that's all, but remember, before you leave, come on, before you tune out, subscribe to the gameleap website, where we are going to help you get to the next rank. If you're stuck, click the link down below, and I'm out. Peace!